It's Sunday. It's 8 p.m. on the East Coast. It is time for the Sit Down with LB. Hello, everyone. Happy Sunday. This is LB here with another episode of the Sit Down with LB. I'm really excited today because I have an incredible guest in store for all of you. You all know who she is, and I'll get to her in a second. For those of you who are here again, that are so supportive, that are always here, I appreciate you guys. I appreciate you supporting this. I'm having a lot of fun, as you know, and can't wait to dig into it, into conversation with my guest today. COVID is still here, alive and well, and we're trying to deal with it as much as we can. But we will weather this storm, hopefully. Let me give a shout out to some of the people that are already here: Daniel Billingsley, Rosalind Wesley, Jessica Zeller, always here in support of Alan Morrison, Josh Daniels with capital letters. Yes, we have her in the house, and so I'll introduce her in a second. Selena Perryman, so many people. Jim Lieberthal, thank you. Kibra Hawley, yes, okay. I could spend all day saying, who all the people that tuned in, but so many people are excited, as I am excited, because I have an incredible guest here who needs no introduction. Hugely successful in her career, hugely has sung all over the world in the world's most important theaters with the world's most important conductors. So many high profile things she's done and appearances. Again, as I said before, she needs no introduction. I am joined today by the wonderful Denyce Graves. Welcome, Denyce.
Thank you, LB. I'm happy to be here.
It's nice to have you here. Where are you speaking to us from today, if I may ask?
This evening we're in New York. We're in my apartment in New York.
Okay, but you split time between New York and your other home?
And Maryland. So
okay.
We have a farm in Maryland outside of Baltimore, and then an apartment here in New York. So we go back and forth depending on what's going on. But since the onset of COVID, we've been mostly at the farm. We being myself and the kids, two teenage kids.
Yeah, teenage kids. Now, are you more of a Maryland person, or I know you're from DC, or a New York person now at this?
I think a little bit of both. I love New York. Whenever I come to New York, I always think, oh my goodness, I love this city. And then whenever I go back home to the farm, I always think, oh, it's so great to be here. But I realized that I said whenever I go back home.
Yes.
Right. So perhaps because I'm born and raised in Washington, D.C., that whole DMV area really feels like, I have roots there and a lot of family and so many friends. And so perhaps I feel more grounded there.
Yeah. Well, let's jump right into it. We chatted earlier in the week, and I know that you had a conversation with the fantastic, of course, phenom Cheryl Mills. And so I was listening to that interview, that conversation the two of you had, and he told me, you talked about rather the beginning of classical music for you. Would you talk about that experience? You said you had a friend that introduced you to classical music. How did that go?
I was 13. I was a student at the Performing Arts High School in Washington, the Duke Ellington School for the Arts, and I was late for a class that day, and I was racing, and I was at my locker, and I ran into this girlfriend, Cassandra Cunningham. We used to call her Cassandra Countryham, and she said, "Denyce, I've just heard something you've got to listen to. And I said, I can't, I'm late, I've got to get to class. And she said, no, 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 you have got to come listen to this. And so we went to a listening library at the school, and she found a recording of Leontine Price singing Puccini arias. And so we sat in the listening library, we played the album, we got to the end of the album, and I said, play it again. And she played it again and got to the end. I said, play it again.
Oh my.
And then some time passed, and there was a knock on the door, and it was the custodian. It was 8 p.m. And we spent all day in the listening library. We didn't go to the bathroom. We didn't eat. We listened to Price sing over and over and over and over for like 12 hours or something crazy like that. And she and I, and we both fell in love and said, okay, that's it. That's what we want to do. That's what we want to do with our lives. And so we made a pact that day that that's what we're going to do. So we both went to Germany together. We went and did an exchange program. We went in Munich, and we stayed with a family there.
Was that in high school?
That was in high school.
Wow.
And then from there, we both went on to Oberlin College for our undergraduate studies. We were roommates at Oberlin. We were both at the conservatory together. And we were setting out on this course to become like Leontine. Of course, we had no idea what that meant and what that entailed. And nobody can be like Leontine, of course. But listening to her sing with just such, I am the daughter of a minister. So I grew up in the church 7 days a week. And I come from a very strict family background. And so, only gospel music was allowed in our home.
Mm-hmm.
And it was of course, when my mother wasn't there, we'd listen to Michael Jackson. The Jackson 5 is what it was, Jackson 5 and stuff like that. But it wasn't really until I got to Ellington that I discovered all kinds of different types of music. And that was certainly the first time that I'd heard classical music and heard opera. And here was this woman who was gorgeous and looked like us and was singing with such we just got goosebumps all over, and these incredible high notes. And I've said to her so many times that when she sings, you see the face of God, because really that's what it's like. It's just a revelation. And in that moment, that day, my life changed and took a very, very different and distinct and particular course. And it was after hearing her sing. And so we said, that's it. That's what we wanted to do. And we were encouraged to see someone who looked like us and was out there, doing this amazing thing. And I don't care who you are, even if you've never heard opera like we were, at 13 years old, you hear Leontine Price sing, and that will just make you stop.
It
right?
changes your life.
Oh, and so many others, I'm sure. So many other people, I'm sure that. But it definitely changed my life that day. It gave me a life, actually. It put me on a course.
So that obviously made a huge impression upon you. And so obviously you would say that you're a person that's driven and determined. Was there ever a moment that you wavered and said, I'm not exactly sure if I want to do this? Or did you know, no, I absolutely know that this is what I was born to do?
When I was at New England Conservatory, after I finished my work at Oberlin College and went on to New England Conservatory, I'd won the Met auditions. This was back in the 80s. And so at the time after I won the regionals before the nationals, something weird was happening with my voice. And Larry Stayer, God rest his soul, who was running the Met Young Artist program at that time, was a huge champion of mine. And he'd heard me sing. He said, Denyce, your voice does not sound the same. This isn't the same voice that I heard, some months ago. And I said, I know, I don't know what's going on. So he sent me to Dr. Wilbur Gould, who was the ENT at that time, back in the 80s in New York City. And he discovered that I had an imbalance in the thyroid, that I had this thyroid disease. And if you look at my neck, you can even see I have goiters. Anyway, that's another story. But You can see it there. So he discovered that I had this problem, and that every time that I sang, it got worse, actually. And they were trying to figure out what to do and which medications to put me on. And so I stopped singing.
Whoa.
I stopped singing entirely. And I became a secretary. I worked, oh my gosh, I worked at a computer company, and I worked at a hospital, actually. And I was accepted that summer into Wolf Trap's Young Artist program in the summertime. And I called up Peter Russell, who was running the program at that time. And I said, I'm no longer singing, so thank you so much. But I'll have to return, and cancel the contract. And so he said, well, please, stay in touch, Denyce, and let me know what's happening and that sort of thing. Some months later, I got a call from Houston Grand Opera Studio, and they said, we got your name from Peter Russell at Wolf Trap, and he said that we should listen to you sing. And I said, well, thank you very much, but I'm not singing anymore. And she said, okay, well, thank you so much. She called back. Her name was Shauna Bowman. She called back some months later and said, I'm just checking in again to see how you're doing and see because your name keeps coming up. And I said, thank you, I appreciate that, but I'm not singing. Well, it maybe had been about almost a year, and she called again, and she said, I'm just calling because everybody keeps telling me about your name, and I just wanted to see how you're doing. I was on the phone with a friend of mine, and I had call waiting, and I said to him, this is Houston Grand Opera calling me. He said, Denyce, you are crazy. Every singer in the world would die to have an opera company call them. What is wrong with you? And I said, yeah, but I haven't sung now in a year. I don't even know what my voice is going to be like. So I clicked back on the other line and I said, listen, can I sleep on this and give you a call back tomorrow? She said, yes. That night I went to bed. I had a dream that I was in the doctor's offices of Dr. Wilbur Gould. And I said, something's wrong with my voice and I can't sing. And so he said, there's nothing wrong with your voice. This was in the dream. And I started singing, and then people started coming from the waiting room into the examining room, said, oh, what a lovely voice, what a lovely voice. So to me, that was a sign. I called Houston Grand Opera the next day, and I said, I'm coming. I went down, I sang an audition. I sang one of the best auditions I've ever sung in my life. They offered me a contract right there on the spot, and my life took a very, very different course. But I had actually stopped singing.
Oh, my gosh. In that time that you had stopped singing, were you happy?
So isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting that you would ask that? You know what? And nobody believes me when I say this, but I swear to God that it's the truth. I was never not singing. I was not phonating, but I was always singing in my mind, in my body. I was listening to music. I was always, whatever that seed is that makes us want to sing, the desire to sing or the call to have to sing, that was still very much alive and present in me. So while I was not phonating and I was not making sounds and I was not doing concerts or lessons or coachings or anything like that, I didn't feel deprived. I wasn't sad at all. I know that there were some people that were happy. I know that some people thought, "Whoo, she's gone. That's great." I know that. But I didn't ever feel like I wasn't singing.
But
music was still very much alive and rooted in me.
Were you attending performances? And I'm sure, of course, in this business, we have friends that become like family that are close. Of course, you had talked about your friend that you guys had been studying the whole time together. And so it was clear that people all around you were probably succeeding in the business. And so it's hard to get away from that. And I didn't know if that would affect you not singing and hearing all these people, oh, I'm going to this program or I'm going to this one. So were you still attending performances and surrounded by music because of your friends?
I mean, my life was very different because I was working and I sort of had a 9-to-5 job, and that my schedule changed, and it was unlike that of a lot of my peers and a lot of my friends at the time. But when I could, I'd go to concerts, and I also listened to music a lot. But and I would run into people. There was one girl. Luz Bermejo, Luz, if you're out there, shout out, who, I won the Met audition. So that was a very, most of my friends, not all, but most of my friends are people in the business. And so, my best girlfriend, I went up against her. I went up against a lot of my friends when I, competed in the Met auditions. So, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, and sometimes there's tension, and it's hard, to stitch those friendships back together again when you're competing against each other. Sometimes that can be tense. Mm-hmm. And so in the time before I took that job, I was in Boston. I was working at Faneuil Hall. And I decided that at that point I wasn't going to sing anymore because something was going on in my health and we couldn't figure out what it was. And it seemed like I should take a time out because the more that I sang, the worse it got with this problem. And so I was working at this kiosk selling Wurst, like schnitzel and Wurst. And yes. One girl came up who I beat in the competition. She came to my little hot dog stand, right, to buy something from me. So that she loves that. She made a real moment out of that. Oh, look at you now! Look at where you are now.
Right.
But that's all right. That's all right.
Oh my gosh! I'm sure that was. Oh gosh! I mean, how did it feel in that moment? Did you want to like shrink to this size because of it, sure. Or were you proud?
I wanted to die, and I was very uncertain of my path. I didn't know where I was going to go from there. And I was working at Entree Computers, and they loved me there, and they wanted me to stay. And I said, no, I can't stay. And then, so I'll tell you this story really quickly. So I went from there to working for a hospital administrator. And today, this guy, Warren Hansen, I don't know if he's in the audience, but he's one of my dearest friends. Anyway, I was working there as a Kelly girl. So I don't know if you know what that is or what because I'm older than you are. I'm
just
sure.
A little bit, not that much.
I don't know about that. But anyway, so it was these temporary temps, where you could go into this agency and work, for a stint, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or whatever it was. And so I was working for this hospital, and the man that I was working for, who's now one of my dearest friends in the world. In fact, I'm meeting him for lunch tomorrow. The girls that were in the office said to me, whatever you do, don't go into his office because he's really mean. Don't go in there. I could not wait to go into his office. That was the first thing I wanted to do because they said, don't go in there. And I thought, my gosh, who is this person? So I went into his office and I saw on his wall, he had posters from the Metropolitan Opera. And he said, what are you doing in here? What are you doing? I said, I'm sorry, I was bringing him a letter or whatever it was. And I said, oh, you're an opera fan. And I said, I'm an opera singer. And he said, yeah, right. And I said, well, I am. I mean, that's what I've been studying to do. So he said, yeah, right. Just go, type this paper or whatever it was. And then months later, when I got into Houston Grand Opera, I sent him a cassette tape of myself. I said, I'm the girl who was the temp in your office, and this is me singing. So he called me back. He said, okay, who's singing on the tape? I said, that was me. He said, no, it wasn't. I said, yes, it was. I was telling you that I was studying opera. And that's 30-something years ago. And he's one of my dearest friends. He's like a godfather to my children. He's a member of our family. He knows more about opera than you and I combined. He's a real fanatic. In other words, if he goes to the opera, he goes to the entire run. If I'm studying a new role or something, I can call him and he'll say, which CD do you want? Who do you want singing it? Who do you want conducting it? He knows everything. But So that was just sort of an interesting twist that happened in my life, where the universe was sort of showing me and keeping me on my path, you know.
Well, look how things turn out. And, it's interesting how you meet someone and later on the friendships that become that kind of crystallize because of a shared passion. And so it's interesting that because his great love for opera and, of course, you having your incredible gift to be an opera singer, how it brought you guys together and you are like family today.
He's seen me perform more than anybody, more than my mom, more than my husband, more. He's seen me. He'll come anywhere to watch me perform. He's one of my greatest fans and a huge opera fan.
I was going to ask if he gets the title of your greatest fan. We have people that everywhere you go, you see somebody, you're like, oh my gosh, you're here again, but he's always there. Yes.
He's always there. He comes to the entire run of everything. I think he's seen me do Carmen like 75 times or something crazy like that. Oh, and he can tell me which night I was different or I did something different. He's
incredible mind. So let me go back a little bit. You said, so you heard Leontyne Price. So did you make this like distinction, Leontyne Price, soprano, Denyce? Did you think you were a soprano? Did you want to be a soprano? Or did you know you were a lower voice singer?
I was never a soprano. Not ever. Not even from day one. Not from day one. I remember in high school studying with my teacher, I was trying to sing something and I said, that note is too high. And she said, Denyce, that's a D. That's not high at all. I was like, that's too high. I've always been a lower voice from the very, very beginning. And my daughter too,
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Is she a singer?
She sings. My youngest daughter, she sings. She's into musical theater. But she sings and she has she had a low voice when she was like 2. She'd say, hi, mama. And we go like, whoa,
Well, your voice is lower than mine, so I don't even know about having a low voice. I was always a high voice. I'm one of 6 kids. Yes, I'm one of 6 kids, and I have 3 sisters older than me, and I used to sing higher than some of my sisters. That was before puberty, obviously. But even after puberty, I still have a pretty high voice.
Right.
It never really changed. And so you have this idea of Leontyne Price, yes. But then since you knew you wanted to be a singer, did you then begin to seek out lower voices that you could emulate?
No, not at all. I never thought about it that way, nor do I to this day. No, I just wanted to sing. I mean, I didn't even know if I could. But I was at school at a performing arts high school for music. And my music teacher, in kindergarten and in junior high said, Denyce, you have a pretty voice. I think that you should, audition for the performing arts high school. But this was very early on. I mean, I was 13. I had no idea of what sort of, lie ahead. And I just knew that I wanted to sing. And when I heard her, I just thought, my gosh, if I could do something like that, but I didn't even know what that meant. I mean, it's one of those things you don't know what it's like until you get into it. You can't possibly know beforehand, right?
Right. Yeah, but obviously somebody saw something in you and people encouraged you throughout to pursue this. And so when you went through high school, you got to Oberlin and you were constantly supported and promoted. Obviously, people calling you on the phone saying you have to do this. And so when you got to Houston Grand Opera, was it like, this is what I should be doing? Was the transition back into it, was it a bumpy one or was it one that was pretty easy?
Yeah, for the grace of God, it was that transition into it was really smooth. I was very excited. I was happy to be singing. I was happy to be working. I was happy to be associated with a house and to be under contract and to know that I had for the next 2 or 3 years this job where I could do what it was that I loved doing. And so I was really excited to be there. A lot of people told me, oh my God, the humidity is going to kill you and the flying cockroaches and all. I had a wonderful time there. And I was with, I met a lot of friends there and met a lot of incredible people in the business. And that's really where things took off and life changed exponentially, from that moment. But I just was, I loved being able to sing. It didn't matter who the audience was, because they would send me out also on a lot of educational outreach, and I did all kinds of stuff. I would do, we'd get in the car and drive and, for 2 weeks, and we'd do these educational outreach, 3 or 4 of them a day. And, in the morning there'd be kindergartners, and in the afternoon there'd be, junior high school kids. And then there was, people in the senior citizens home, and then, all kinds of different things. And then I was covering and performing, and I met magnificent people, magnificent conductors. It was, it was an opening to something brand new.
Yes.
And I was happy. I was just happy that I could sing.
Do you remember your colleagues that were in Houston with you?
Sure.
And are many of them still singing today?
Yeah. In fact, one of my colleagues, Idri Means, is my daughter's voice teacher. So
full circle, right?
Full circle. So I don't know how many are still singing. Marquita Lister.
Of course, I know Marquita.
Marquita was there. My first year was her last year.
Mm-hmm.
I think she's teaching at Morgan State now.
That's right. She lived in Germany for a while, but then she came back over, right?
I don't know, but I know she was in Europe. I don't know. She's from Washington, D.C., mm-hmm. and we didn't stay in very close contact. We speak every once in a while, mm-hmm. But I don't know so much about her life and how it unfolded in the career. I know that she had one, for sure.
Mm-hmm. She did do quite a bit in Europe, actually. I do know that. And so I think I saw her one time. I was in Europe, and so I did, of course, Washington, D.C., and was very happy that she had a career as well. But yes, you were saying?
Yeah, beautiful voice, beautiful voice. And in fact, when we did Porgy here at the Met, I called her because I didn't have a big experience with Porgy and Bess. And I knew that she had toured that role, had toured the opera as Bess. I think she'd done quite a lot of them. And so I called her to speak with her about the opera and about just her thoughts, and to, sort of learn from her experiences about it. And that was not so long ago. So, right. But she was there. Idri Means was there. She's gone more into musical theater. Jem Demler, I don't know whatever happened to him. So I didn't really stay in contact that much with some of my colleagues, and I don't know how many are actually still they're in the business,
Yeah.
But maybe not all on the stage.
It's interesting because now, even you said you're a little older than me, but not that much. But even my friends now today are the artistic administrators and the agents and general directors and voice teachers. And so we find a way to kind of gravitate into different roles in this business. And so I think it's very interesting how, you'll find these people, and sometimes they'll even come to performances and say, "Oh my gosh, Denyce, do you remember?" And you're like, "Oh my gosh."
So much fun. Yeah. So much fun. I love that.
Let's talk about Carmen. You mentioned Carmen. Of course, I'm sure it's like not possible for you to do an interview or a conversation without talking about Carmen, right?
I remember seeing an interview once with Ella Fitzgerald saying about a tisket, a tasket, and she was like, "Please don't make me sing a tisket, a tasket again," And so I think it's for me, whenever I'm doing a concert or recital anywhere, they always ask, "You've got to sing something from Carmen." When I went to Houston Grand Opera, the very first opera that I did was Carmen. Actually, the very first opera that I did at Oberlin for opera scenes was Carmen. But I sang the role, of course, of Mercedes in Carmen, and I covered Carmen when I was at AGA the mid 80s. Mm-hmm. And so I think, for a lot of my particular voice type, there's not a tremendous well, there is, but in terms of operas that are part of the standard repertory that are, that have sort of won this worldwide approval where you see it coming back and back again with houses all over the globe. Carmen is certainly a very popular one.
Exactly. And when you heard of Carmen for the first time, did you say then, "Oh yes, this
No,
is my
oh,
role"?
no. I said, oh no.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
Why?
Well, you have to know that I was a very shy girl growing up in the church, the daughter of a minister. First of all, the decision to become an opera singer was one that was not received with a great amount of enthusiasm. So that's number
Really?
one.
Oh wow.
Number two, it didn't suit my personality at all. I was not this sort of extroverted, gregarious person, and I still am not. I know how to be that, but it's not my nature.
Mm-hmm.
Nature is to be quiet, and I always have been that way. Carmen was such an incredible stretch for me, Denyce.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think that there was any way that I could portray such a character, and I was in great amount of conflict about who she was, myself, and I just didn't think that I could be on stage doing that. I'm not a person who found herself. I'm not a natural stage animal. I became one.
Mm-hmm.
I know how to become and hopefully embody and inhabit these different characters that I have to play, but it is not my nature, not at all.
Wow.
Not at all. So I couldn't have been further away than from somebody like Carmen, but that was sort of my initiation because she flung me so far from where I was.
Mm-hmm.
My best girlfriend is a singer, and she's sung with the Opera House in Zurich for the past 26 years, and
What's
we
her
were
name?
together. Her name is Anna Serrano.
I think I know her.
Well, if you've sung in Zurich, maybe
Many times,
you
yes.
yeah. Okay. So she used to, stage my arias for me when it was audition time. And, she staged all my arias, she staged, the Seguidilla, Habanera. And she'd say, come on, Denyce, you got put your hands on your hip and do this and do that. And I said, oh God, I can't do that. And she and I were working at this place in Center Level, Maine, this resort called Quisisana. And it's this seasonal resort where a lot of college kids would go because they put on full-scale operas and musical theater. But you have to work in some capacity for the resort. So either you have to be a chambermaid, or you have to drive a boat, or you have to work in the dining hall or something like that. You have to work for the resort, and then at nighttime we'd put on these full-scale productions. And I'd be in the wings, too afraid to go out on stage. And she said, Denyce, there's no way you're going to ever have a career if you. And somebody said, slap her, just slap her. So it was time to go out on stage, and I was frozen.
Really?
And David Nish, a pianist, said, slap her, and tell her we were doing the Baccarat.
Yeah.
And I was just too afraid to go out on stage. I couldn't possibly, do that. So I'm saying all of that to say, and she's, this Italian firecracker, who really helped me get comfortable with being on the stage. She's my best friend. So to sing Carmen, I mean, it was quite the initiation. It was quite the departure from who I am.
Mm-hmm.
But I had to go so far away that for me to have a career was to sort of get thrown into the deep end of the ocean.
Oh my gosh.
With this particular character.
Well,
because everything after that
was
much
easy.
easier.
Well, they
Right?
say that Carmen is the type of role that you have to be equal as the actress as you have to be the singer in order to be a convincing Carmen. So for you, was it like burning the midnight oil that you had to check in with people like Anna, or you met with stage directors that said, help me find this character? Because of course you are known as one of the great Carmens in the last 20, 30 years. I mean, I'm not aging you, but I'm just saying you are known as one of the great Carmens. And so obviously you've done something to really inhabit that character.
When I was doing my apprenticeship with Houston Grand Opera, Michael Kahn, who was running the Shakespeare Theater, was the director. And they used to hold these meetings. Like, what are we going to do with Denyce? Somebody's got to talk to Denyce. The girl cannot get around on stage. Like, somebody's got to talk to her.
Oh, my.
And they would say, you've got to move. You're uncomfortable. You've got to, And they would have these sessions just for me to try to get me to loosen up. But I was this really shy, very awkward church mouse, right?
Oh, my.
And so it really took a lot for me to it was an enormous stretch to find myself in this in the skin of this particular character. When I did my first Carmen, it was with Minnesota Opera. The tenor was Stephen O'Mara, God bless his soul. I was so scared. I was so nervous. And the la 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 la, the I don't know how well you know the opera, but the seduction scene. I mean, I was scared from beginning to the end, but this particular production we did was very bold and very sort of avant-garde, and there was nudity, and I had to do everything. It was really something.
Your parents didn't come to see that one, did they?
My mother came. My mother wouldn't speak to me for 2 weeks.
Are you kidding?
She said, Denyce, I raised you to be a good Christian girl. I had people from the church here. We can't go back to the church now. What in the world were you doing up there? And where are your clothes? And were you kissing that guy? And what were you doing? The whole thing. I mean, she just was so upset.
Horrified.
And thought, horrified, what did I do? This is not the woman that I raised, right? And I was so nervous for that. And Stephen O'Mara was so terrific. That scene in Act 2, as I said, there was a fair amount of nudity in that scene, and I'm not exaggerating when I say that. But the stage was dark and lit only by candles, and I had to dance and weave in and out of these candles and playing the castanets, and I was so scared. Well, first of all, I was showing my body, and he talked to me the whole time while I was singing. He just kept encouraging me. No one could hear him, but he'd say, you're doing great. That sounds great. You look terrific. Yes, do that again, And so the whole time on the stage, he was coaching me through. And I'm eternally grateful.
Oh, my gosh.
He's an incredible colleague and just so kind and sweet with me. And he knew how scared I was. And I was with people, veterans in the business who'd done it a lot. And here I was, this really awkward girl, this really shy girl who could not find my way, and they'd given me this enormous title to carry. And I felt a tremendous responsibility, and I wanted to do a good job, and I wanted to get it right.
When did it become easier?
Oh, it's never been easier, but that part became easier. From there, things sort of started and exploded because, as I said earlier, Carmen is one of these operas that you can find it's going on somewhere all the time, right? People love it. It's just one fantastic tune after the next, and people know the story. And we've heard it. It's sort of permeated our lives. It's in commercials, it's in televisions, it's film. It's all over the place. We realized that, oh my goodness, I've heard that melody before. I didn't know that was from this opera. And so it's a popular opera on its own, and it's a sellout on its own, no matter who sings. So it's always going on. So when we did this new production, and we had such a success with that production, one came right after the other. Marilyn Horne canceled in San Francisco, and so they hired me to come out to do it there. Then Agnes Balza canceled at the Staatsoper in Wien, and then I was there, and then it just started.
Yes.
And I was going from one. I mean, I have sung that role everywhere. I'm not kidding. In every single house that exists.
Mm-hmm.
With everybody.
That's like Barbara Seville for me. I'm like, I have done it. One time in Germany, I think I had done 5 productions in 1 year. There is no place I haven't sung the Barber of Seville except for Covent Garden.
Oh, is that right?
I've been to Covent Garden several times, but Barber Seville, I haven't. I was supposed to go this year, and of course, COVID.
So my husband and I went to Barbieri at WNO when you were singing.
Oh, yes.
I laughed so hard, like I fell out of my chair with you on the piano. That was one of the funniest times that I've had in the theater. I love going to the opera. I actually do like opera.
Yes.
Yeah.
David Gately, that was his production.
Oh my God.
The first act finale was in slow motion. That was so, with Eric Owens. Wasn't that just,
It was fantastic.
Loved it.
I thought it was fabulous. And my husband, who I normally have to drag to the theater, we were like slapping our knees and like bent over. It was so much fun.
Oh yeah, but I completely can sympathize or agree with you when you talk about having sung something so many times. It's on autopilot, and people, they will say, I'll say, Rossini bought this house, or Rossini bought these clothes. So the same thing is true with Bizet, right?
That's right. No, but is it easy? Does it get easy?
Honestly, I have never been a person that's been nervous. And I hear all the stories about Neil Shikoff, of course, Corelli
more than anybody.
Neil, and I know Neil too, and I hear about the horror stories of them really needing to be like drug on stage. And years ago, I was doing a competition, and I remember I had this epiphany that was like, okay, why are you nervous? People come to the theater to be entertained, and you being nervous is going to get in the way of them being entertained. So don't be. And from that moment, I'm like, don't be nervous. I don't know if I just talked myself or psyched myself out of it, but I don't get nervous. But you get nervous, obviously.
I get nervous. It's not like it used to be. It's not debilitating, but it manifests in different ways. I'm quiet. Mm-hmm. And I don't want people calling me or texting me saying, we're here, we're so excited, we're in the theater, or we're getting on the, we're in the Uber on our way. That makes me crazy. Mm-hmm. And I don't want people coming to my dressing room. Don't knock on my door. Don't tell me toy. Don't tell me all of those things for me get in the way.
Anxiety, right? Well, not anxiety, but just your routine is bothered, right?
Yeah, I like to be quiet. I like to do my thing. And then when I get on the stage, then I relax. Mm-hmm. Usually I'm much more comfortable once I get out there. But before that, I consider that time sacred, because people don't realize that when they knock on the door, they're the 8th person who's knocked on the door. So that means that I'm taking all my time taking care of them.
Greeting people.
Like saying, oh, I'm so glad you're here. Thank you for coming, blah, blah, blah. All that. Yes, I feel great. Are you nervous? Are you excited? What are you supposed to do with that? So it just takes a lot of time. But over the years, I've had to certainly learn to have to, entertain that because I know that people's hearts are good.
In the right place, right?
They want to wish you well, but it just can take up a lot of time.
And, I've talked to many of my colleagues about that. And some of them now, they'll put the light on or put a do not disturb. And then you get this, people will have this idea, oh, she's that way, and she's a diva or something like that because, and it's not rightly placed because, again, as you said before, even when you don't want people to come in, you have to have the wig person and the dresser and the general director and the conductor and some of your colleagues. And so when other people come out of the blue, it's just like a traffic jam of people coming.
That's right. That's right.
And it gets you in a place that you're just like, okay, I have spent more time greeting people than getting ready for the opera.
That's right.
Exactly.
But everybody's different. Some people like that. I sang with Neil a lot, and he'd like to come into the dressing room and chat with you and talk about things and talk about, and I'm much more organic. I don't want to know anything. Even before this broadcast tonight, you were telling me a little bit of things of what may happen, but I prefer not to know. I just want to get out there, get on the stage, and let's see what happens, But I also realize that if he comes to my dressing room, he needs that.
Mm-hmm.
So if I want to be a good colleague, I can extend that courtesy and that grace because he needs that moment, right? And there may be times when I will need support from him or whomever. So I try to extend myself then in that way.
Exactly. Well, I mean, it's important for us to be colleagues, and there's something about when you have people that you're performing with that are friends, that are real friends, that in that moment when you're on stage, they sincerely want to see you to succeed, excel, have your best outing possible. And so let's talk about some of the great performances. As I mentioned before, and everyone knows, you've been on stage with everyone, all the conductors, all the great singers.
Everybody.
And so let me ask you this. Can you think of a time that you were on stage that the singing was so fierce that you're like, oh my gosh, I got to make sure I bring it 100% because X, Y, Z is all singing this thing down to the core, or just singing it till it won't exist anymore? Do you remember where you just thought there was so much wattage on this stage that I'm honored to be a part of it, but this is just one of the most incredible experiences of my life?
Sure. So many, fortunately. But you mentioned the interview last week with Cheryl Milnes. I would say that performance, it was my first performance of Dalila.
Yes.
With Jimmy Levine, Cheryl Milnes, Placido Domingo. It was my first, right out of the gate. The very first time.
I know you're like, oh my gosh, pinch me, right?
Right. Yeah, I mean, that was quite something. It was just all heavy hitters, right away. So, yeah, but I've always, enjoyed that. It's hard, I think, sometimes not to become, because I've sung with such wonderful people, beautiful conductors. It's just been a joy. It's been a dream and a great, great blessing to have had the career that I have had and that I still enjoy, and to work with such magnificent people and such magnificent artists that I have admired and who have been iconic for me, and so it's just hard to not look at them and go, oh my God. I was telling Cheryl Milnes, and like we're actually friends, which I can't believe.
Mm-hmm.
He calls me on the phone and we chit chat. And his wife, Maria, who's also lovely and beautiful, and my husband and I, they're our Kennedy Center Honors couple. That's who we look forward to hanging out with usually during the Kennedy Center Honors. And I can't believe it. Every time I look at it, I'm like, oh my God, there's Cheryl Milnes. So when I'm, singing with them, I bought all of their LPs and stuff, and the LPs and stuff.
I got that.
Right. And so it was quite something, looking at these incredible artists that I've admired. Jose Carreras, when I'd say, oh my God, that's Jose Carreras. And I'm singing, I can't believe I'm, singing Carmen with him. This is crazy,
Yeah. Sam Raimi.
Oh, Sam. Okay. All right. Sam Raimi. So I was in Boston. This is I was working as a hotel operator. Okay. I worked the graveyard shift. I worked from 11 at night to 7 in the morning. I used to give the wake up calls, good morning, Mr. Brownlee. This is your 7 a.m. wake up call. Well, this was in the time that the Metropolitan Opera was touring.
Okay.
Where did they stay? They stayed at my hotel, which was the Omni Parker House. I worked there as a hotel operator. So I gave everybody their wake up calls, Levine and Sam Raimi. So I gave Sam Raimi his 7 a.m. wake up call. So I said, good morning, Mr. Raimi. This is your 7 a.m. wake up call. And by the way, my name is Denyce Graves. I'm a singer. And someday we're going to sing together.
When you finally did sing with him, did you tell him that story?
I told him the story. I said, you're not going to remember this, but I gave you your wake-up call when the Met was touring. We did so many Bluebeard Castles together. We did so many Conte of Mans together. We did lots of things together. Many, but I couldn't believe it. I mean, I couldn't believe here I was a student giving him his wake-up call. And then the next thing I know that, sometime later,
you would be sharing the stage.
Yeah.
Yes. Sam Raimi was when I made my Met debut, I think it was 2007. He was Basilio. I'm like, oh my gosh, that is Sam Raimi on stage.
I know.
WTF.
I know.
But now, Sam, you talk, we keep in touch, and of course we keep in touch on Facebook and stuff like that. And he is just the coolest guy in the world. But I'm like you, how the heck am I friends or friendly with Sam Raimi?
Sex and I just can't believe it. But Cheryl Milnes told me that the same thing happened to him, with Robert Merrill, who then called Bob, and they became friends. And I can't believe it, And so it's a beautiful thing.
Yes.
And a great blessing to have that happen.
Let me ask you this. You've talked about, or I've talked about, the fact that you've worked with so many incredible conductors. Have you ever been in the presence of one of them and just thought, oh my gosh, I am working with one of the genius minds of music? You've worked with Muti, you've worked with Mazur, you've worked with, the list goes on and on and on, where you thought, oh my gosh, this is a genius. So many.
I mean, I thought you were going to ask who was my favorite. So many.
You may offer that if you want to.
Oh my God, I wouldn't dare.
That's why I didn't ask.
Yeah. Mehta for me was really something. Zubin, because I loved him because my voice, and I do a lot of Mahler, and of course he's one of the great, interpreters of Mahler. And so we toured together in Israel. We did lots of wonderful things together, but we also did Carmen together at the Maggio Musicale in Firenze. And, he came to every single, sometimes a person of his stature would send along his Mitarbeiter, right? And he would show up perhaps,
maybe
No. He was there for every staging rehearsal. He was there the whole time, sharing, discussing, adding his input. And he and I had done lots of concerts together. I mean, so many Messiahs we'd done lots together, but he was someone that for me was a real pleasure and joy, because I just admire him so much. I love the way he makes music. I love his left hand in particular. I always feel like he held music in his hand. So working with him for me was all of them that I've had the great honor. Working with Muti was fantastic because those were master classes. We did I think the first thing I did with him, the very first thing was La Vestale at the Scala, Spontini. And he held the musicals in board rooms. Where we just sit at these long tables and talk. And we would just talk about the music. And he would, go measure by measure by measure. And it was just a class, just so much fun to see someone so learned, obviously so accomplished, but also so turned on by music. Self so invested,
Yes.
someone who so clearly had done the homework
It's
that
like
he
another sense, almost. It is like an innate quality or something in them that is just God given on a different level, right?
right, yeah. I mean, I just a joy.
I had the opportunity, and I don't know if I'll kick myself. Years ago, I had already sung a scala a couple times, and so they asked me if I wanted to sing something with Muti, but this was very early in my career, and I just said I'd heard the horror stories about Muti at that time, and I was a pretty green young American. I was like, Muti wants me. I'm not ready for that. And so that ship sailed and it never came back again. And so I'm like, okay. But I've heard from so many people that you really learn about opera singing if you work with a person like Muti.
He has an incredible ear, and he'd give a lot of vocal advice too. He, he understood the voice, and he'd say, this needs to be lifted, or try a brighter vowel, or so. I mean, I loved him, and I was with him, and I saw how he could be. But I think that it depends on what your attitude is when you come to do the work. Mine was always to be open and just learn. And
Prepared, obviously. Yes.
if you weren't prepared, you were out of the room.
Immediately.
He didn't tolerate anything.
Even if you were prepared.
Yeah, and we would sit in the, he would, sometimes he'd say, he'd hear you sing it, then he'd ask the cover to sing it, and then he'd say, the cover's doing it, you're not going to do it. Right there in front of everybody, just like that. I mean,
yes.
He's great.
Well, I went to I think I debuted there in 2002. So Muti was still at La Scala, and the reason why they have the rehearsals, as you know, where everybody comes to every rehearsal, is because at his volition, at his whim, they're going to do this scene and they're going to have these people sing, and you don't know when you're singing. You don't know if you'll be mixed up with a different cast. It's like, okay, no, we want you with this one there. Nope. You come here, sing these 3 bars. No, okay, you sing this. And it was because Muti had put that tradition and that type of regimented rehearsal experience at La Scala. So I can imagine how that was.
But also he had great humanity too. I remember once we were doing, I don't remember what we're doing. Maybe we were doing Dialogue of the Carmelites. I can't remember the opera. And, the Italians are such big soccer fans or football fans. And there was a big match going on, and we had a rehearsal. And he could just feel that the spirits weren't there, because everybody really wanted to be watching. And he said, look, tonight is the final, right, of the, whatever the soccer game was. I'm sorry, I don't follow sports. And he said, let's go home and watch the soccer game, and we'll come back tomorrow. And everybody loved him for it. Everybody jumped up and cheered, and it was just, just wonderful.
Yes, I've heard from many people that he is an incredibly generous person. But of course, this persona that he has, that I remember people would run down the halls and say, Muti's coming, and the rooms with Maestro. And
Party with the Red Sea. He's absolutely revered. When he walked through the door, you knew. Did you ever see the film The Devil Wears Prada?
I did. Meryl Streep, right?
Remember when she came through how everybody'd be running and the girls would put on their heels and they got rid of her, so all the doors were open, and it's like that. When he walked through the opera house, you knew it.
Yes.
You knew it. And everybody had to make sure that they had their ducks all in a row.
His presence was surely felt. Oh my gosh. Can I ask you a couple more questions?
Yeah.
Let's talk about some of the singers of the past. We talk about Leontine, of course, and I know you have a relationship with her and some of the other singers. And this word you mentioned before, diva, or I mentioned it. This word diva is a distinguished female singer, but it obviously has a negative connotation. And if I may say, when I was just getting out studying, starting to try to pursue this career as an opera singer, I knew who you were. You were the it girl. You were all over the place. And there seemed to have been not there hadn't been anyone that kind of like occupied that position as the real black diva. The real black diva. Of course, you had the Arroyo and Price and some of these other names, but there was, a battle in Norman. But then there was a time that it seemed there wasn't. And then there was Denyce Graves, and you seemed to occupy that position. Did you look at them and want to not emulate them in the sense of their careers? Everybody has a different career, but their dignity and the way they presented themselves, their public persona. Is there anything in you that tried to pattern yourself after what you saw or what you looked up to?
No, I mean, I admire them all, and not just the African American singers. I mean, so many of them, I admire, and I still do. I'm a huge Kathy Battle fan, huge.
Mm-hmm. Me too.
Right. I mean, come on. Just so pretty and just such beautiful, just shimmery singing.
Angelic.
Absolutely just gorgeous. So I'm a huge, Marian Anderson, Leontine Price, of course, for me, is sort of
special.
My big, she's very, very special to me and a big, hero in my life, for many reasons, apart from the singing as well. But I don't think that I looked at them and wanted to emulate anything. I wanted to be deserving, and I wanted to, be deserving to share the stage with them and others like them whom I admired, but I also loved people like Ellie Ameling,
Mm-hmm.
so much, but I just thought that, Kathy was just, every time she performed, it was just, all of them, you don't get to be here. You don't get to be here. You don't get to do this.
Yes.
If you don't deliver the goods.
Yes.
Right? So anybody that's there, and I've always said this, whether you like them or not, anybody who's having a career, in my opinion, deserves to have it.
Mm-hmm.
Because they don't hand out careers. You've got to earn the right and the privilege to be there.
Yeah.
And it is a privilege and an honor every single time. So for me, while I may not know what each person's journey is, like I may not know every detail of your life, Larry, but I know what it takes to get from where you started to where you are now. And I sort of stand in reverence of that work.
Yes.
And of that cost.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't get to be up there doing this unless you put in the time. You can't fast track this.
No.
It's not who you know. It's either you can do this or you can't.
Mm-hmm.
Either you can do it or you can't.
Well said.
So I admire everybody who's out there doing it because it's not easy. I heard Pavarotti say once that he always had to compete with his younger self. Mm. People would come hear him and say, well, but you should have heard him 20 years ago when he sang Lily's Ear. That was really something. And that, Liz Taylor said the same thing. She said, when I walk out of the door in the morning, that they used to talk about how she was notoriously late. And she said, but when I walk out the door, I'm Elizabeth Taylor. And somebody's always capturing that. Somebody's always taking a picture. Somebody's always, those moments there's always a great expectation.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's heavy. That's a burden. While it's great and a privilege, it's also a burden too, to have to live up to what people think.
Right. There's a higher expectation every time you step on the stage because, and especially in a day like today, which has changed even since I started the business 20 years ago, that everything is immediate. if you have a big success, yes, it's immediate. But if you have even a little bit less than a big success, it's also immediate. And then the boo birds and the people, the clack, they're out there ready to pounce.
Ready just try and get rid of that stuff from YouTube. I mean, I just try. I mean, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's everywhere, and once it's documented and it's out there, it's out there.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So yeah, there's particularly now
Yeah.
where everything is captured.
Well, you've had an incredible career in the opera world and the concert world, but also doing public appearances. And so you've gotten a chance to meet so many people in the world. Oprah Winfrey. Oh my gosh, you've gotten a chance. You've sung for several presidents. You do a lot of stuff. Actually, you and I met the first time, if I'm not mistaken, is when we were both doing the recital at the Supreme Court for our dear mutual, who I absolutely just love so much, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Would you talk about her
The
in your?
RBG. And I think that we have something coming up for her together too.
We do. I
We do.
absolutely adore her, and I will have to just be very proud of the fact that I was on stage with her in The Daughter of the Regiment, where she had a speaking role at Washington National Opera.
I remember.
That for me was one of the most memorable experiences that I ever had on stage, just being in her presence. Would you talk about your relationship with her? And I know you love her.
Who doesn't? I mean, this little teeny tiny, package of dynamite that's just incredible. She has been, as most of us know, she's a huge opera fan, and will super from time to time, and has been an incredible support throughout. As I said, I'm born and raised in Washington, D.C., so I've done a lot of events in Washington where she's been there and honoring her. And she's been supportive from the very beginning, not just to me, but to my whole family, with my husband, when my husband went through his big illness, with my children, sending them books. I mean, she's sort of been, this incredible figure in our lives. And I can't believe that, we know her. Some years ago, Nelson Shanks, the world's leading portraiture artist after John Singer Sargent, painted a portrait of me that hangs in the National Portrait Gallery. And he also did one that they call the Supremes of the Justices, Kagan, Sotomayor, and Ginsburg, and Sandra Day O'Connor. And so we were there for that, and had worked with Nelson on this incredible project. But she is just a real life superhero. I mean, really, what she has done for women's rights, for men's rights too, actually. The way she has just been a real example. I mean, she's someone that, and as I said, she comes in this packaging where you don't expect that kind of power. She's in this frail, she's this frail, tiny little petite woman who is just so brilliant and will take anybody down. And her life story has been, it's amazing. Amazing. I mean, what she's done in her life, her husband, Marty, I had the great honor of singing at his memorial service. And, I don't know if you know the story about how when they were at school together and he was ill and she went to school, and they had a small daughter. I think they had their daughter Jane at the time. And she went to her classes and his classes. And they both, graduated on time with honors. And that was just back then. But she's just been a huge, and from the very beginning, I don't know if you read any of her book, but from the very beginning, from early on, she displayed this kind of brilliance where you could see that she was going to have this unusual life and of service to humanity and to the world, and all that she's given and all that she's fought for. She is really a superhero. She is.
Yes.
She's brilliant.
She is a giant for me. She is someone that, when I'm in her presence, I just feel like I am going to benefit. I'm going to get something from her, something that is so well thought out. She has such an incredible mind. Yes, I know it's, the thing I respect about her is that she was incredibly close with Scalia. And these people who had two polar opposite, complete opposite views in politics, that she could somehow separate that and then appreciate the person he was. And so I also got a chance to meet him as well, and he was incredibly charming to me as well. And even though sometimes you think people don't politically line up with you, I love the I guess the representation of their relationship and how they could coexist and have a great love for each other, even though they had such different viewpoints. Isn't that? Yeah.
Have you ever seen the opera?
I have. Which opera?
Ginsberg's Scalia.
I haven't seen it.
Yeah.
I should see it, right?
Yeah, you should. You should. Well, once we return to the stage, but
do you miss it?
Again, like that time when I wasn't performing, I'm singing all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm practicing, I'm singing, I'm doing projects, and my life is incredibly busy and full. I have a lot going on. I'm a wife. I'm a mother, and both of the kids are home now since there's no school. We have Max who's going into the 12th grade, and Ella who's going into the 11th grade, and it looks like they'll also be home for this first semester as well. Mm-hmm. And we'll see what happens, in spring of 21. I don't know. But, I have this life on the farm. I'm incredibly domestic. I love cooking. I love gardening. I also teach. I do lots of master classes. I'm very, very busy. So do I miss it? Yes, but I don't feel like I'm not performing in the same way. I that desire to tell a story or to express yourself, I feel like I do that in lots of different ways. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's with cooking. Sometimes it's in being a mother. Sometimes it's in being a wife. Sometimes it's with singing. Sometimes it's in teaching. Sometimes it's in mentoring young and up and coming singers, which I do a lot of as well. And so I feel fulfilled. But of course, but I'm not sad, I think, or I don't feel so isolated. I miss seeing my friends.
Yes.
But I'm speaking with them, and I'm talking with, and also it gives us the opportunity to connect in different ways. I don't know that you and I would have had the opportunity to know each other. I don't know that we've sung the same sort of repertoire that would put us in each other's path, where we would have the opportunity to speak in this way, to get to know each other more. Mm-hmm. It has afforded us some opportunities as well. Of course, we all want to get back to the stage and have that live, visceral exchange, with the audience, of course. But I wouldn't say that I've been sad or lonesome. I know some people have expressed that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I tell people all the time is that we have to have full lives. And in order for us to be, committed and really, yes, our personal lives have to be full and fulfilling in order for us to really get on stage and, give our best. Let me ask you this. You're talking about the farm life. What activities on the farm life is the great Denyce Graves doing that, we think the wonderful Dalila and, of course, Charlotte and Berthier and, of course, Carmen and all the many things you've done. What would we be surprised to see the great Denyce Graves doing on the farm?
Well, most of the time, I get up in the morning. My chores of the day. I get out. We have an orchard. I get over there. I get to the garden. I go and feed the horses and the
Oh
alpaca.
my.
That's the first thing that I do when I get up in
Really?
the morning. That's the first thing that I do. I get up.
In
You know,
overalls?
T-shirts, jeans, shorts. Flip flops. Usually boots. Usually
Right.
because on the farm. And I'm doing that first part of the day. And I enjoy that. And I love being outside and I love being in nature. I would say, my husband is a real outdoorsman. And so we've had to, and life on the farm, some things are always happening. Something's always happening.
Right.
So you've got to, deal with that right away. And the gardening is relatively new. That happened really since COVID. And because we've been home and, so we're doing that with the kids. We have lots of fruit trees. But the actual getting down on our hands and knees and in the dirt, being with the animals is one thing that we've, had to do from the very beginning because we have alpaca and we have horses and we had lots of dogs and now we just have one dog, but we had 12 at one point.
Oh my gosh. 12 dogs. Do you ride the horses? Are they?
The kids do. Our kids do. I used to, but our kids do mostly. But mostly we just feed them now. They're sort of pets, We mostly feed them now, and we enjoy doing that. But there are things, they get sick. Things happen that you have to, take care of them, and
Vet
so
bills,
I
yeah.
enjoy, and I enjoy that, and I love cooking, and I think one of my good friends, my pianist Laura Ward, who I think you know Laura Ward,
Yeah,
don't
yes,
you?
we did a recital together. I think we did a couple. Yeah, I know Laura. Yeah.
Yeah, because do you remember once that you and I ran into each other at
Philadelphia, the train station. I
waiting for
remember
the
that. That's right.
Harry, yeah. And I was going there to work with her. Anyway, she's a fantastic cook.
Oh,
And
wow.
and every time I go to her house and we work, she always makes something fantastic. And then I go home and I try, whatever it was. And she's sort of my cooking coach, I call her my Thanksgiving coach because I call her on Thanksgiving. We go step by step. Have you started the rolls yet? Have you started the mashed potatoes? Wait, don't do that. So I enjoy that. I enjoy nurturing my family. I want to be good at it. It's something that's important to me. I want to be good at the things that I do. I want to be a good wife. I want to be a good mother.
Mm-hmm.
I want my husband to say that no one's loved him better than I have. I want my kids to say that I'm the best mother in the world. Those sort of things are important to me. And so I really throw myself into their care and into nurturing them. And that's something that I do with a great amount of gratitude and pleasure.
Well, there's someone on here saying that you really can throw down in the kitchen. Taylor Hillary Boykin said that she said you made her a meatless dish on a day that she so wanted some meat. And so she can definitely attest to the fact that she didn't miss that meat at all. So that means you can cook.
I'm a very good cook. I'm a very good cook.
That's developed over the years, or did you have that gift from the beginning?
I think it's developed a lot over the years, and I'm getting better, I hope. But it's something that I enjoy. My husband got very, very ill some years ago.
I heard that. Yes.
Very ill, and he went into heart failure, and we had a lot's happened to him. He's had quite the journey, and I see my role as taking care of him as a privilege, and I wanted to cook really good, healthy, nutritious, wholesome food to sort of, in my way, nurse him back to wholeness. And my kids too, I'm late in the game with starting a family and that sort of thing. So that came much later for me. And I guess I was at a place. I'm not sure it's an older person's game. I think it's a young person's game.
I think we started about the same time. I was 38, 39 when my first child was born. So, and I know people, I remember when I was 36 years old and I had a high school classmate told me that she was going to pick up her grandchild. She was 36. I was having my first kid. Well, my wife was having our first kid.
I remember your wife was pregnant.
That's right. She was very pregnant.
I remember.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I do enjoy it. I take great pride in it. And again, I think I'm at the place where we almost lost my husband so many times that the time that we have together is just, I mean, we all feel that certainly now during COVID, we've sort of been thrust together. I'm convinced that there are going to be a lot of babies that come out of, this time. Oh, and probably a lot of divorces too that come out of, this time that we've had to, be forced together. But it's a way of showing love, and it's something again that I want to do a good job at it. And because I have not had to spend my life doing, I think, like some women have to do who are raising their families, which is the most difficult. I mean, it is just the hardest job there is. There's
Hats off.
I mean, being a parent is the tallest responsibility in the whole wide world, and privilege too, but there is nothing greater when you are in charge of another human being and how they turn out. And oh my gosh, it's just such an enormous job.
I've told my wife that I have a great deal of respect for what she does. And I've never been one of these guys that I have ever tried to diminish, the wife's role if she stays at home. As I said before, I'm one of 6 kids. And so my mom, she was a housewife, home wife, whatever you want to call it. But she had a job that she did. She did it very well, but it was a 26-hour a day job. And so, of course, me being at home with COVID, I get a taste now of what she goes through on a day-to-day basis. And I'm like, thank you, my dear. Thank you for your sacrifice for our family.
That is right. It's a huge job, and it's never ending. And it's a lot. And particularly, I think you have little ones, right?
Yes, 8 and 9. So they're still.
Oh, she's having to teach too. Having to. I mean, it's a lot of work.
And our son's autistic, so he's special needs. So that's another,
it's just
challenge we deal with.
You bet it. You betcha. You have to be present all the time.
I'm going to let you go in a second, but let me just ask you, if I may, one more thing. Would you talk about now, you talked about the fact that you're, I know it's very important to you to mentor and to work with young artists, and you do master classes and you teach voice and you do all these things. How gratifying is that for you, and what does that mean to you right now, even though you're still on the stages and performing and doing so many different things? How gratifying is it now to be seen as teacher and mentor?
Far more gratifying than I would have imagined. We were living in Baltimore. We moved from Bethesda, Maryland to Baltimore, and then I had done quite a few master classes, and Peabody had expressed interest in my coming there to teach, and I just kept saying, oh, I don't know that I have the time for that, and I don't know. And it was one of the great shocks of my life when I got into the studio and also great responsibilities. Because I do feel a responsibility. That was one of my students, Taylor Boykins, who made that comment about the
the meatless dish.
Meatless dish, that I feel such responsibility also to them. I know what it's like to be them. I see them when they come through the door and they're standing on the other side of the piano with their beautiful faces and looking at me to impart some sort of information that will help them along their path. And I feel a great sense of duty to that. To that. I feel a great responsibility to that which draws us all to this art form and to want to be able to express ourselves in this way. I understand what that's like. You understand what that's like. But I had no idea that it would become so so much a part of my life the way that it has. These young singers that I have the great joy of working with have permeated my life. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, so much of my thoughts are about them, and I'm dreaming about them, and I worry about them, and I get nervous for them, and I get excited for them, and I cry with them. And I couldn't have imagined that I would be so as invested as I am.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, maybe to a fault. I mean, my husband says, "Honey, can we just spend one night, just one night, when we don't talk about the girls?" I call them my girls. Can we just spend one night where you're not telling me about this one, or we've got to get Simone ready for this, or I'm worried about Mary for this, or whatever it is. And even some of the young people that I'm working with or that I mentor, I feel a responsibility for their success. I want them to succeed. And sometimes it happens in the way that they want, and sometimes it doesn't. And for
Mm-hmm.
me, then when it doesn't, it feels like a failure. And I take that to heart. Or when someone decides that they're going to take a different path, or that they're maybe not cut out for that, or when you have to sit down and have that hard conversation
Mm-hmm.
and say, "Look, maybe we should cast a wider net."
Mm-hmm.
We don't make those decisions. I'm not in any position to say that if somebody comes to me and they want whatever it is that they want, and if we decide that we're going to work together, I want to help them achieve that.
Mm-hmm.
And it becomes personal for me. But it also it can become a burden at the same time, because I feel so responsible for each one of them. And
Mm-hmm.
I want whatever it is that they want. I want that more, I want that so much for them. And so I love them, they feel like an extension. They feel like my family. They feel like my children. And that I could not have imagined would have been the case.
And I'm sure you're full of pride when they do succeed like they
Oh,
want to.
even I mean, I think that one thing about this business is that we can become so myopic, that we become so concerned about what's happening in our lives and what's happening in our careers. um, I would say that I'm so much more concerned now about what happens in the lives of my students. I'm happier. I'm happier than any time that I've ever been happy for my own success when something happens for them. Or on the other side, if there's a disappointment, it's hard for me sometimes to recover from that, because I feel that I'm responsible for that. And so that's the part that's been surprising to me,
Yes.
where they're concerned, because I love them so much, and I understand them, and I understand, and I see, and because those same people, we were the same people.
We know
You know,
that intimately, that story. And when you're talking about teaching, I remember a story, actually, a situation when I was an undergrad, and my teacher, he had taken this guy who was a singer. He could not sing two phrases without cracking. He couldn't do that in the beginning of the year. And at the end of the year, he somehow managed to get this student to sing an entire recital without cracking one time. And he wept, and the student wept, and all of us wept. And we were like, he said, "This is the joy of my life, teaching and making such a difference in someone else's life." And so even as I begin to look at teaching, and I have some things coming up, I'm excited about that. And I can, your excitement for it, I can imagine it's huge.
it's huge, and not only that, but you learn so much more about your own voice. You
Mm-hmm.
learn so much more about singing when you've got to articulate that. And each person who comes through the door has a different set of issues, right, to address, and you have to find the right language or the right way of teaching, because every people learn differently, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so when you're able to, with that moment when you see understanding dawn in their faces, you feel like Oh, tremendous. And there are some times that I feel really tired and or that I don't have it in me that day, and then I go and I work with them, and I am just
Energized.
energized, and
Hmm.
just it's given me back life. It's I've gotten years back. It's made me younger.
Well, let me just. Elliot Page is here, and Barbara Wright Pryor, and Mark Thomas Ketterson, and so many people are saying hello. Alicia Hall Moran, and Rachel Cooper,
Oh,
and Oxkern English, and of course Tom Donardo was here. Mark
oh, really?
Doss, yes, Tom Donardo. He said interviewing you many times,
So many
and
times.
of course he loved that. Mark Doss, our friend, Jim Lieberthal, Patrick McCoy is in the house.
Oh,
Kelvin
so
Page,
Patrick.
Mary Marv, Lori Holtgren, Jeremiah Abia. They're here. Yeah, Tiffany Renee Jackson and Robert Highwatt and Jarrett Lee said you can bake scones, cookies, lemon squares, all of that stuff.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Everybody showed out. Keebler Holly, they're like, we have to be here because Denyce
Thank
Graves is here. And they're like, Denyce Graves part two. I'm like, everybody's busy. They're not going to come back and talk to me. But this has been so enjoyable, Denyce. Thank you for being here tonight.
I've enjoyed it too. It's been so much fun. I was really looking forward to it on my drive to New York today. I was like, and people were texting me like, we know you're speaking with LB tonight. We're gonna be the audience. It was so much fun. Yeah. Thank
Marcus Beam says hello as well.
our Marcus,
That guy.
yours and mine. Love
Marcus.
Marcus Beam.
I love Marcus Beam, but you have been, oh my gosh, Anya Chinwa. All these people are here. They love you. They love you. So thank
Oh,
you from the bottom of
thank
my
you.
heart for being here. This has been a wonderful time of just sharing and getting to know you more. And of course, your career has been absolutely, dreamlike. And I know you can look back and say, all the things that you've accomplished, you're still accomplishing things. This is the last question. Is there ever anything, because you've done everything, is there anything that you say, I wish I could have done this?
Many.
Really?
Oh gosh, so many. I mean, that's another show. So many. I mean, there's, so many. Many.
Well, then this will do. If you have nothing else to do, and I'm sure you have many, many things to do, we'll have you back for part two.
Well, I would love it. There's much to say. There's much to say. It's been quite the experience, but there's been lots of disappointments, tremendous heartbreaks, and lots of regret too.
Oh
A
yeah.
lot, a
Well, we'll
lot.
we'll leave that for the next time then, because this crowd is clamoring for Denyce Graves part two. So we'll give you
Ah,
some time, and then. But thank you, Denyce. Thank you
uh,
so much. I appreciate it sincerely.
having me. And
Thank
thank
you.
you for doing what you're doing and bringing this to everyone. This is so much fun, to have these intimate conversations where you really get to know, an artist. Because with us, there's a real, simpatico, and you can really be who you are. And
Exactly.
yeah, so,
Exactly.
so thank you for this service.
Thank you. I do it with great pleasure and deference to people in this art form. So I appreciate you saying that. But be well. My best to your family, your husband, and we
Thank
will
you.
definitely. There are like tons of people saying part two, part two, part two. We're gonna let her have her private life and do all the things she needs to do, but we'll definitely see if we can get you back another time. So thank you, Denyce, again.
Wash hands. Yes, that's right.
We'll wash hand and be socially distanced. So have a wonderful rest of the night, and we will talk to you soon. Yes.
Thank you. Absolutely. With pleasure.
Thank you,
I'm
Denyce.
in. I'm there.
Thank you. Thank you. And so, to all of my friends, wow, this was such an amazing evening with Denyce. Oh gosh, wow, loved it, loved it, loved it. Next week, tune in because we will have a person that I like to call my auntie. Martina Arroyo will be here next week on the Sit Down with LB. Have a wonderful rest of this Sunday evening. Bye bye.